So first of all, I would like to start thanking Mort for agreeing to do this interview, as well as his mod K and Riot's PR team that kindly helped me in the process of arranging this encounter. For anyone that doesn't know, Mortdog is the gameplay director of TFT and is considered the most important TFT dev within the community. And if you are watching this video, you have probably cursed him or thanked him. It depends if you high rolled or low rolled in your ranked games. So nice to have you here, Mart. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, happy to be here.
The purpose of this interview is to give a deeper context of Murdoch as a person to the Brazilian TFT community. We know there's this language barrier between our region and the rest of the world that speaks English all the time. And of course, we want to contextualize everything around TFT. So to start, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself and you can talk a little bit about your general life, your interests, and your trajectory as a game dev.
Sure, sure. Yeah, so I'm Mort, like you said, gameplay director on TFT. I've been at Riot for a little over 9 years now. And so I've been on TFT pretty much since the game launched. So that's now more than 6 years. Been acting in this role for a long time now. Before that, I helped on League of Legends with things like event modes, loot systems. My very first project was removing the level 30 cap and adding blue essence. That was my first project at Riot. Um, and yeah, so I've been at Riot for a while. Before that, I was at Nintendo for 11 and a half years, shipped 8 games, 6 Mario versus Donkey Kong games, and a couple other games. So I've been a game designer for more than 20 years now, which is pretty wild. Beyond that, pretty much a typical gamer in the sense that, like, when I was like 5 years old, my parents got me a small TV and an NES, and have kind of been playing video games ever since. Any chance I could play video games, I was. Whenever I couldn't, I would be either like making my own games on paper or reading like the strategy guides because it was just like all I cared about was video games. So kind of that traditional is like, well, I graduated high school. What do I want to do? I want to make video games. Where do you go? This school. Okay, great. So very very one track mind is what I'll say. But that's beyond that. I've been married 18 years, which is wild. My daughter's about to turn 18, which is crazy. So I feel old. I've got 2 kids, and yeah, that's kind of me.
That's great. I know you worked at Nintendo before. That's a great thing. And you said before in your live streams that you used to make games like you spent 2 or 3 years making a game, then you release it and
Yep.
go on vacation and
Yep.
feel free for a while. But how was this? How hard was this transition between Nintendo and these games and to live games? League of Legends first, but most importantly TFT. That's a live game with bi-weekly patches, so pretty different.
Yeah. Yeah. At first, it wasn't too bad because on League of Legends, I was doing sort of projects within a live service, right? So like for example, the level 30 cap was a project we started, it had an end date, we shipped it, we followed up, made some adjustments, and then it was done, right? And like you'd have a project vacation and then start the next project, right? Whether that be like Nexus Blitz or whatever. So that wasn't so bad. I think TFT is where it's finally like been like, oh, holy crap, right? Or like if you're a designer who was on like the league balance team, I imagine you experienced this also, but where there really isn't downtime. And in fact, to use a real example, set 16 is about to come out, and I've been, working on set 16 pretty hard, but I'm also like in meetings today about set 17 and 18 and all like there is no pause. It's like keep going, and so it's definitely it takes some adjustment and it takes some willpower to know where to draw your lines and where to sneak off and take a break where you can. But yeah, it's definitely been more hectic.
And something that happened along the way is that when you came to work for TFT, you became the face of TFT for the community.
Hmm.
And I wanted to know if that was a conscious decision, if it was something that was necessary for the role, or it was something natural that ended up happening for any reason at all.
Yeah, it it wasn't like a riot driven initiative or anything like that. Hilariously enough, what happened was I remember it pretty distinctly because when I was on League, I had a Twitter account and was posting like small updates for people who cared. And it wasn't a big deal, but it'd be like, oh, here's the next skin that'll be available, or here's something we're changing to the loot system for people like Spider Axe who were like pretty engaged. But then what happened was when I moved to TFT, and I remember it was like set one, and we wanted to do a micro patch, and I wanted to tell players, and the comms person I was working with was like, okay, well, normally when we tell players something, it takes 8 days because you have to write an article, get it translated, localized for all of our people, get it up on the website, and it takes 8 days. And I'm like, I can't wait 8 days. There's just no way. So how about I just tweet it out? And he's like, I don't know, but like, okay, let's try it. And so we just started doing that. We started being like, hey, players, I just have something to tell you. I'm gonna tell you directly. And I think that generally responded pretty well. And so that made it feel like we were communicating directly. Players from other regions would sort of help translate and pass on that news. It would spread on sites. And then, sort of secondarily, there was a weekend where I was like kind of caught up, and my wife was like, hey, you used to stream for fun. I bet TFT players would love it if you streamed. And I was like, yeah, sure, I could try that. And Riot was like, yeah, there's no problem. And so I figured I tried it, and then it kind of kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so it sort of developed naturally from that point. Um, but like I said, it was more just, I don't know, I like TFT and wanted to talk to players about it. So, but yeah, no actual like Riot wanted this or anything like that. It was no weird initiative or anything like that.
And it kind of got real big, not only your live streams, but YouTube and how your image became to the community. Like everyone talks about you, not necessarily about you, but Mortdog is this big thing, and that's one of the main reasons that I wanted to make this interview because it kind of transcended you as a person, and that's pretty big. And because of that, I know that earlier this year you took a break from
Yeah.
social media. It
Yeah.
was you stopped posting on YouTube as well 2 months ago, and you kept only your walk the dog videos on Discord that
Yeah.
I liked a lot. I watched
Yeah.
it every morning when I got to work, and your daily thoughts. So how is that for you? It was a big change. I know it's been a couple of years that you were working non-stop and
Yeah.
communicating and making rundown videos every patch, and every patch is every 2 weeks. So it's a big thing. How was that for your mental health, and how was the perspective of
Y-
not being so online?
Yeah. It's an interesting conversation, and there's a lot to break down here. But at the end of the day, I am just one person on the TFT team, right? And
Yeah,
one of the things we have to be careful with, if you look at across the industry, sometimes people who can be in my position can like get a big ego or let it go to their head or start taking credit for things that they didn't do and things like that. And you really want to make sure that that's not what you're doing, right? Like I am just a representative of the team. And so in part of that, like you said, is that there is this like awkward line where it's like the TFT team versus Mortdog. What does he do? What does he not do? And trying to really be careful. And so I think for a bit there, it was sort of like, hey, let's just take our foot off the gas because part of it is also, like you said, I think even Riot was sort of not sure how to deal with this because I'm kind of an anomaly in the industry in that regard, where it's
yeah,
like, wait, is he an influencer? Is he a developer? Like what for people who are outside the TFT team, they like weren't even sure how it all worked or anything like that. And so I think this year in particular, Riot's been sort of trying to figure out what that means and what my role is and stuff like that and where I can be most helpful. And so at least for me, this break was sort of nice in the sense that not being as perpetually online was good, because there were definitely days where I had a bit of an unhealthy thing where it's like wake up, immediately go to Twitter, Discord, Reddit, and read everything so that you know what's going on. And man, if it was a bad patch in set 12 or whatever, it's like, oh God, and you kind of take that emotionally and things like that. But the other thing is that during these months, I just really kind of went full bore on my work. It was like, well, if I have all this extra time, and maybe it's a little unhealthy because what I probably should have done is like take time off or take a break. But no, I just made sure set 16 was as good as it could be, or I pitched a separate thing that I can't talk about yet that was like, this is cool, and just kind of found new ways to channel that energy, and it led to some pretty cool things. One of the things coming out soon, for example, is we did these augments that celebrate the Tacticians Crowns winners and Open winners, and like that was something right when I went on break. I was like, you know what? I'm just finally doing this, and we're just gonna make these augments. It's gonna happen. I'm tired of not doing it. And so it's been good, but at the same time, I do feel like there's been a bit of a gap because I think TFT built itself up on that honesty that we've tried to provide, where it's like, hey, here's a patch, it kind of sucks. Hey, here's a patch, it's great. And like being willing to talk through things. And it felt like there's been a gap there, and so I'm kind of hoping to maybe turn that back on a little bit where I can.
Yeah, I feel like the gap was missed. It was felt like instantaneously. The moment you stopped showing it up, we felt it. And I think there's this big discussion right now in the TFT community, especially higher elos, that TFT became an informational game. Like you need information to be at the highest point of your game, at the highest peak. If you want to compete, you need to know a lot of things that are not necessarily explicit. And then there was this discussion about group studies and everything. But I think there's this big discrepancy between uh, the casual fans and the really invested high elo competitive players.
Hmm.
And your absence kind of made this bigger, and that was really crazy, a crazy moment for the community. And something that I wanted to ask that I think it's not entirely clear from the communication was how was your participation in this set, in set 15? Because a lot of players are saying that this set was maybe not as good as it could be if you were working on it. But I know you did some stuff like the Yumi rework spell or
Oh, sure, sure. That one patch to help out. Yeah.
prismatic orbs. That was a change that you were invested in. So how much was your
Yep.
participation in set 15?
Yeah. So unfortunately, the timing was a little weird, but my particular involvement was early on in set 15. Because if you think about it, set 15 was really started development right as set 12 finished,
Okay.
right? Like, because we usually develop sets about a year before they ship. So early on, for example, I would work with our set lead Sloan and establish some of our foundations, right? So like for example, the anime theme, which verticals are going to be good, how that all works, things like that. But around, you know, 2 or 3 months, a little before that, before ship, I got asked to work on a different thing at Riot for a little bit. And it sort of presented a good opportunity where, like I was saying, like I am just one person. Let's see how things go. And you can check it out in the learnings article, right? The team really talks about a lot of this stuff, but I think in particular with set 15, the set mechanic that came in pretty late, which was a pretty complicated set mechanic, really put a lot of extra burden on the team that was pretty rough, right? Like the combinatorics, how it all works, just made it a really, really tough challenge. And so I think that was actually the biggest thing that made set 15 a bit of a challenge for that team. And so by the time I came back, it was sort of like there wasn't really a lot to do other than try to keep it going as much as you could, right? Like if you're so I rejoined the team, and it's like, well, where do we want Mort to spend his effort, right? Is it fix 15 or try to help with 15, or is it make 16 as awesome as it could be? And we chose the latter. We chose like let's make sure 16 could be really good, and so that's where a bulk of my effort went when I got back. And then in addition, like I told you, I was kind of like just doing extra projects because I wanted to. Like the prismatic orb thing was something I came back, and I think at the time someone was complaining about prismatic orbs, and I was like, I could fix this.
Everyone was complaining about prismatic
Yeah, and
orbs.
so it's just like let's just fix this. Let's do that, and it was looking for opportunities like that. So that was kind of the gist of it. At the end of the day, the thing I'll say is like everyone on the TFT team has their sort of specialty, right? Like for example, one of my lead of set leads, Giovanni, he's like the most amazing creative out of the box thinker, and he'll come up with really sick 5 costs and things like that. Um, my specialty is a lot of the details. Like, how do I make this what number does this augment need to be to make it work? Or if I'm going to make this hero augment, what's the path? How does that work? And it was certainly a gap that was felt, with me being not around. And one of my big challenges in the future is going to be helping other people level up that specialty that I've got. So,
Got it.
yeah.
So I think something very important to discuss, based on what you just said, is what is exactly what you do as a gameplay director. I know you said that you have a big team, a lot of people working on
Yep.
15, 16, 17, 18, maybe 19, 20, I don't know.
Yep. Yep.
But a lot of people don't understand that there is a structure in the TFT team, and you don't make everything. You're
No,
just
certainly
working
not. Yep.
a lot of parts. So can you explain your role and maybe a basic structure of the TFT team?
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, I'm the gameplay director, which is a very fancy term for basically if it's in the game, I need to make sure it's fun, right?
Okay,
So basically I work with our sets team, our live team, and our finalization team, and I oversee all of that. Um, Now, to that point though, one of the things that Riot, for better or worse, and I think for the better, is that if we assign a team something, we let them work on that thing, right? We don't, it's not like a dictatorship where it's like Mort said do this, you must do. It's like no, no, no. They get to be creative, right? And so we have 3 sets pods because remember how I said we were going a year in advance?
yeah.
So like right now there is a 16 pod, a 17 pod, and an 18 pod. And when the 16 pod finishes, they'll start up 19. Each of those has a set lead on it. So for example, set 16's lead is Julian, and then they might have 2 or 3 other designers that can be helping out with that set. And throughout the course of their development, I'll meet at various points. So for example, when set 19 starts and they're really starting their paper structure, I'll probably sit down with them and make sure that like, hey, are you thinking about your cost structure? Are you figuring out the needs? Another thing I can do is like share some learnings between sets. So, for example, today I had a meeting with the set 18 lead, and I was talking about how, hey, in set 16, we're seeing a lot of really big wins with threat like units. Let's see if we can find a place to add some threat like units in a future set, possibly. Or, and considering those learnings that they may not be aware of, because usually our sets pod is focused on their work, right? And so, they may not see all the things that are happening during development. So I help spread that apart. Then typically once the set has started like being created, like I've helped finalize the paper, there's a part where they just build it. And I'm not usually too involved in that process. But then once it's built, it's like time to play test and iterate. And so our finalization team comes in, and this is people like Nico and Tim who are like high level players. I'm like masters. I'm not quite as high level as they are anymore, but I have been in the past. And we use those players, and it's like, all right, let's try to beat this setup and see what needs to change. A lot of my work recently on 16 was a lot of this finalization work and things like that, where it's like, let's really cover our bases here. Another group, by the way, is the augment team. And so I'll work with the augment team of being like, hey, I see you've made this augment because you think it's funny. Is it good for the game? Should we, and so it's a lot of overseeing because at the end of the day, I would say I probably have the best overall view of TFT and how players experience it. And so again, I might work with a set lead who's focused on their set and go, yeah, but have you considered this player type or have you considered this solution? And so it's just a lot of context swapping, helping those various teams. Same with the live team, right? It's like, hey, I noticed you're doing this patch, but hey, your patch looks a little big. Maybe we could cut out these things or focus on these things, and and there are things that like I help solve. But at the end of the day, my job is to give credit to them. And so it's like my job is to help boost their solutions, right? And so that's kind of the high level, but like I said, it really is a lot of like jump to this team, help them with this problem, jump to this team, help them with this problem. Like I said, literally this week it was a 16 thing into a 17 thing into an 18 thing into this interview today. Like that was literally my day today. So
That's incredible. You've mentioned the Inico, and I
mhm,
recall a couple, maybe more than a year ago, you've said on a stream that you were looking for high level players to help the team balance
mhm,
things. And I remember when Inico was hired, I think he was rank 1 in NA for a while, and
mhm,
he's a really, really high level player, and he interacts
yep,
sometimes on Twitter with other people.
yep.
So I wanted to know if the TFT team receives feedback from pros and high elo players, if there is this connection behind the scenes, because we discussed TFT a lot in Twitter and lives, but I wanted to know if there was like a formal connection between high elo players and the balance team.
Yeah, not a formal one. There basically there's two aspects, right? There's when we're making the set and after it's launched.
Okay,
And Aniko actually taught us some pretty valuable lessons because Aniko brings that high level viewpoint to the team, but we've also learned that that has pros and cons. Because one of the things is when we're developing a set, it's changing constantly, right? Or something could be bugged or just not working. Oftentimes you have to squint past and like really picture what it's supposed to be versus what it is. And hilariously enough, the high elo skill set that they're really good at is they're really good at taking something that exists and breaking it, right? Figuring out what's good, what's bad, what needs to change. Like if you hand dish soap a completed set, he'll figure it out and he'll break it. But it's a lot harder when it's like a set that's like half finished, right? And like that takes a different skill set that honestly someone like a Nico or even a designer like Tim, we've had to train a bit of a different approach. So during development, I would actually say that like a high low players are good for a viewpoint, but they're actually not that great for solving the problems.
okay,
But now fast forward to okay, the set's about to come out, it's almost done. That's where they're great, right? Like for example, I think set 16 is about to be shown to like a lot of our influencers and high elo players. We'll pay attention to PBE and like, oh my god, that feedback is valuable, right? And we're sitting there with a notepad ready to go, like, all right, players, what do you think? What do you think? And like there was one that came up today where someone was like, "Oh, I was in this situation and I think this augment is really really bad." And it's like, "Okay, cool. Yeah, we didn't quite think of it that way. Maybe we'll take it out of 4-2, right? Like that stuff is really good, but that doesn't come till the end. And I think if even if you look at something like set 15, the way Tim worked with the community and was like he was really listening of like, "Hey, these power-ups are a pain in the butt or these things are not great." Like a lot of his reactions were listening to the community. And like I said, I think that's where the community is the most valuable is right before or even just after the set has launched. That's
got
where
it.
they're super valuable. But there is no formal process other than just we're out there listening.
Makes sense. Another question about the game design, not necessary balance, is that in the last three sets, TFT has had some core changes like roles revamped and itemization changes, new
Yep.
items, different artifacts, but everything came usually along the set. We had
Hmm.
changes from the items in the middle of the set and changes
Yep.
from artifacts in the middle of the set. Can we expect a more of that in the future, or is it planned to be more stabilized, more the core gameplay more stabilized in the near set?
Yeah. The answer is I don't know. And the reason I don't know is because typically those come from like a need, right?
Oh,
A player
okay,
need. And something that we think might be stable now, fast forward a year, might have become unstable, right? And so generally we try not to just change things for the sake of change. But if we run into a problem, it might be like, okay, it's time to change something, right? It's time to take a big swing. Um, And so, like I said, there's nothing on the immediate horizon, but if a good idea comes, like I'll give you an example, is there's a space that we haven't touched really since the start of TFT, which is carousel. And it's like, do we have a plan right now to change carousel? No, not right now. But if you told me midway through 18 players were just like, man, I'm so sick of carousel and it's too swingy and it's causing all these problems and we really need to take care of carousel. Okay, then maybe we'd spend some time and the finalization team might work with the set team and be like, what can we do to carousel? Let's figure something out, right? And so, roles revamped was specifically because we kept running into this problem where it was like any sort of backline damage felt bad because you were just feeding them mana. And every melee champion's itemization was exactly BT Titans, whatever, so that they could drain tank, and they were only viable at 3-star. And it was like, we've got to solve these like mana generation problems. So that's where Roles Revamped came from. So TLDR here is that nothing planned, but our system designs usually stem from a problem that the player base has created. And if a problem comes up, we'll address it with something like that.
Nice. And because of that, and along that way of thought, was it easier to balance the game when we had sets like 5.5 or 4.5 mid sets? I don't know how it is called in
Yeah.
English, and I remember.
Yep. I don't think so. I think the thing that actually makes things difficult to balance now is when you add an extra layer of systems on top of it, right? So, like, for example, let's just say we had just champions and items.
Yeah.
I think we could get that balanced really well. I'm not worried about that at all. But then when you add something like anomalies on top of it, all of a sudden the combinatorics of like, well, okay, but what if is it the champ that's the problem, or the item that's the problem, or the anomaly that's the problem? That's where things start to get out of control and where I think we struggle the most. And I think that's why, in particular, KO Coliseum struggled a bit because it was just so many different outputs and things like that. And so I'll say right now, I'm actually pretty excited about sets that don't have an overlapping system on top of it. For example, our next set, Lauren Legends, doesn't have a system on top of it. And because of that, I actually think we'll end up in a much better balanced state much quicker. Because again, balancing a champion is pretty easy. We know what that looks like. We know how to do that.
So you can promise that the new set does not have an overwhelming mechanic. It's a simpler mechanic.
Yeah, it doesn't. The new set mechanic, what we've already seen is when people look at it, they go, "Holy cow, that's crazy," and then they start playing it and they go, "Wait, this is actually great and easy, no problem." So
So excited. It's
yeah.
kind of crazy. Um, Along the balancing discussion, since the
Mhm.
removal of augments, we've seen
The
that
stats.
the stats of augments. I'm sorry, the stats of
No, yeah.
augments. The perception of the community revolved around streamer feedback and the perceptions of the pros and the high elo
Hmm.
players. But sometimes that doesn't match the stats, the actual stats that you guys are the only ones that see. So
Yep.
how do you balance that approach when the community is complaining about something, but the stats don't tell you the same thing, and you have to resolve the problem?
Yeah. So there's a lot to break down there. Um, I think generally when we're looking at an augment and someone's complaining about it, the first thing is to identify why are they complaining about it. There was an example from set 15. I can't remember the name of it, but it's the one that says they do true damage based on their star level.
Yeah, it's something evil. Uh,
Oh, Evil Beyond Reach,
yeah,
or something like that. Um, and the perception was that it was either bad or bugged, and the stats were actually pretty good. They were like a 4.3. Okay. But what does that actually mean, right? Like, does that mean it's fine and leave it alone? No. It's important to figure out what's the lesson you're taking here. So the lesson I'll say I took from that is that converting damage, even if powerful, doesn't feel good, right? Like nobody was, even though this was quote unquote balanced or powerful, it just feels bad, right? And like that means we shouldn't be designing augments that feels bad, right? Like that's a pretty clear goal is like don't make feels bad augments. Great. And so now when we look at like future augments, I can tell you that augment's already gone next set, even though it was balanced, because it's not fun, right? And like that's the takeaway here. And so it if the stats are bad and it's just weak, okay, fine. We can buff the number, right? If 4.5% true damage was wrong, now it's 6% and it's overpowered. Great. But that doesn't matter. What matters is making sure that you understand where the complaint's coming from and how to address it, you know? And so that's what we're looking for. And that's why it's important to like not just go, "Oh, they're complaining but it's balanced." It's like, why are they complaining? What is the heart of the issue here? Why does it feel bad, right? Because even we've seen augments. I'll give you an example. Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider is an augment that in our data is constantly at a 4.0, right? It's like a very powerful if you believe data. But that's like not really the true story, right? Because what it's really saying is you only take this if you're way, way, way ahead. And of course, when you're way, way, way ahead, your data is going to be good, and it's even not that fun to take when you're way 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 ahead. It's like some extra items, whoop de doo. So it's like that's a pretty narrow case. Another metric we can use, by the way, that we have never published, but we have what's called pick rate, and that's not just how many times it's picked, but it's like how many times was it seen and then picked. So what percentage, right? So it's like Tomb Raider, for example, had a very low pick percentage because it's just like you never see it, right? Whereas like Portable Forge, I think, is picked like 62% of the time. It's just like
Crazy.
people love that augment. Even when it's weak, they're just like, artifacts, let's go. You know, and so like that's another data point we can use to sort of go, are people having fun with this augment? I'll always remember, do you remember the augment that gave you a Zephyr and showed you who your target was?
Yeah.
Uh, that had a pick rate of about 2%.
Really? Was that low?
People hate, yo, it was so low because even though it was balanced, people just don't want to do the effort of like constantly scouting the person they're fighting, constantly moving their Zephyr around. It feels like work,
I
you
remember
know?
that when that augment was in the game, we don't have any more 4v4 camps in
Yep.
Brazil.
Yep.
So we had to, it was always like, oh, you have the augment, you have to take it. I'm sorry.
Yep. Yep.
It's your turn to take it. It's
Yep.
boring, but you have to take it.
Exactly, exactly. And so, and again, that's where we use the data to get the important lesson. And the important lesson with that augment was nobody wants to do work every turn. They just want to play the game,
Yeah.
you know? And like that's how we use the data to make the informed things to make the game better.
And you said fun, and fun is such an important word for TFT. I think
Yep.
we all love TFT. We all have fun with TFT, even when we low roll and go wave and get
Yep.
really stressed out. But a big topic I see is the balance between fun and competitive.
Hmm.
Because, for example, I think it was this set. I'm not sure, but yeah, at the beginning of the set there wasn't the encounter of artifacts, and
Yep.
then it was added because the community asked for it. And then when it was added, every pro player, every high elo player said, "That's terrible. I don't want it. I don't want it to play it." And the same goes for Trainer Golem. It's very fun when you have nothing at stake, but when
Yep.
you are playing regionals, it's kind of pretty sad to have that encounter.
Yep.
So how hard is to balance fun and competitiveness? And adding context to it, I think TFT is growing a lot as esports. We have finally LAN tournaments. People are traveling to Spain to play uh, the the worlds. So how hard is to balance fun and competitiveness with the growth of TFT esports? And that is in your mind
Yeah.
and you're balancing.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, the way I approach it is I don't think there should actually be a difference in fun and competitive, right? Something should be competitive and fun. If we just go too far competitive, the game's boring. Just
Yeah.
straight up. Like if we take out all the like it is our job to come up with things that are both competitive and fun. Now, you might go, well, what if we come up with something that's just fun but not competitive? The good news is we actually have outlets for that, right? We have Chunks Treasure, set revivals, things like that. So there's actually a space for ideas that are like just fun, right? Like straight up, it is fun to start the game with a 5 cost,
Yeah.
right? Like Chunks, it's just fun. Would I ever put that in the normal game? Hell no. right? Like that's not competitive. So it is our job to come up with things that are competitive and fun. Now, in order to do that, we're going to push the line sometimes and we're going to get it wrong sometimes, right? I'll tell you this, for example. Wandering Trainers is gone next set, but we're replacing it with a different encounter that might still not be competitive enough, okay? And the encounter is you just start with 3 random emblems.
Okay.
It's emblems so that you can move them around, you can reforge, you can do things like that. And we're trying to see if we can keep the spirit but not be able to like cheat out a prismatic with a +1 and not be stuck with what you have. You can do some reforging, you can do some tricks, and we're going to try it. Am I confident that it's not going to be like it'll be perfect? No. No, I'd be lying. Because like I think there's still going to be people of they got this emblem and I didn't and that's no fair and it's less. But like we have to try, right? We have to at least explore and push the bounds so that we can find the really fun and competitive things. And that's kind of our line. And so our goal is to push the line, but then react quickly, right? So, like, I think one of the things that if I look at KO Coliseum, the artifacts I think ended up being a little too strong for too long. And, generally within a patch or two, we would get rid of them, but maybe we should have been quicker, right? Maybe we should have, or disabling the encounter quicker, or things like that, right? So that's the thing I'm looking at with set 16 is it's like there's a few things on my radar that I'm like, we'll see. I'm not sure. But I've also kind of got the shotgun ready to take them out back, and it's like, all right, we tried, get out of here. But again, in order to fully explore everything that is competitive and fun, we got to do that.
You said something very interesting to me is that you're trying to keep the spirit, but make it more balanced, more interesting. Something
Yep.
that a lot of people have complained in the past is when TFT has like something very random that it's out of your control. And I'll give you an example. In Exotech in set 14, you had
Mm-hmm.
no control of what items you would get,
Yep.
and people would get different items. So when
Yep.
we had that patch of
Yep. The
Zeri
Zeri
very
patch.
strong,
Yep.
everyone would go into the game and open
Check
the
Exotech.
planner
Yep.
and say, my Exotech is shit, I don't want to play
Yep.
it, or say,
Yep.
I won the game.
Yep.
And that's something that happened before, and
Mm-hmm.
I believe that it will continue happening because TFT want to keep the spirit but make it better. So, how do you feel about these things that are adding complexity layers to the game and maybe everyone is not experiencing the same? Because one of the biggest complaints on Trainer Golem was he got something pretty good and I got something trash and I can't do anything about it.
Yeah. So to me, step one is like let's use the Exotech Zeri problem, right? Step one, the problem was not that everyone got different items. The problem was one item was just substantially better than the rest, right? Just like that's the problem. So it's like first you have to make sure that you ship and execute on the quality and balance bar that makes that true. Okay. And once that's done, so like let's say we have these 6 exotech items and they're perfectly balanced, which they should be, then is it still a problem that everyone gets something different? If so, cool, let's take that lesson and adapt. But generally, from what I've seen in the past, once the things are actually pretty well balanced, it's not that bad. And I think later in the set, in fact, Exotech actually got to a point where like it didn't really matter what your items were,
You were
you
playing
know.
Vex. It didn't
Right.
matter what your items were. So,
Yeah.
but do you think it's achievable to make something? Because TFT reinvents itself every 4 months. It's
Yep.
the same car game, but a lot of new things.
Hmm.
Um, from your perspective, do you think it's achievable to make something like Exotech in the future with perfectly balanced items? The
I think,
community doesn't seem to
yeah,
believe so.
no, that's true. And to be blunt, I don't think we actually built enough trust that like you shouldn't think we can because like there have been some rough sets. But in my opinion, everything does come down to a math problem, right? And there is a way to simplify it where there is a balance output, right? Like let's say as a hypothetical example, there were only 2 exotech items, right? And one was 30% damage amp, and the other was 35% AD and AP, right? And which one you got was random. There is some number where those two are balanced, right?
Okay.
And then it's like, okay, cool. Now what's a third one you can add, right? Like it's all very doable. And we've been doing this long enough that the numbers are all there. And I think it is achievable. And like I said, one of the big things since I've been back is I'm really trying to help the team understand it's like, hey, when you create something, you need to understand the mathematical limits of what you're creating. Shout out to Kent. He's been spending a lot of time in our augment space. And like we did a real big pass for 16 to make sure this is true of augments as well, because augments are much like exotech, right?
Yes.
Not everyone gets the same augment, but we don't want them to have too big an impact. But so it's important that the augments are balanced. And so it's like, even if you're not sure, give yourself a lever so that, like, hey, if it is too strong, you can lower that lever pretty quickly, right? And so, like, I think, for example, the next set going to PBE, I am confident we have a lot of really good augments. I am not confident they're perfectly balanced day one of PBE,
They
but I am
shouldn't be,
very,
right?
I don't think they will be, but I'm very confident that they all have levers that within a week we'll be able to go, okay, this one said 7 rerolls and it should have been 8 rerolls. This one said 32% attack speed and it should have been 24% attack speed. No problem. And we'll get it there and it'll be a great set launch, right? And like that's what we just have to keep doing is have the confidence to know, hey, I'm shipping this thing. If it's too strong, do this. If it's too weak, do this. And have the ability to look at something and go, actually, if this is too strong, I don't know what I'm going to do, so we should probably not ship this thing, right? You'll see in the next set, for example, there's a lot less trait and hero augments because as we got to the end of the set, I went, guys, if this is bad, it's going to stay bad. I don't want anything bad in this set. I I took it out, and like that's what we have to do to get to that balance. And I'm hoping we can prove in the next few sets that this game is balanceable. So.
I'm looking forward to it. It's like some people are choosing to not believe that things can be balanced, but I tend to think sites usually get pretty balanced at the end.
Mhm.
So I believe we can achieve that in the future for the beginning. You
I,
said,
I think if you look at like Remix Rumble, for example, or Into the Arcane, both had pretty good launches, right? Like the balance I think was because I'm bringing this up because we're about to go into winter break again, and I remember both those sets had pretty solid winter breaks. Like it wasn't that miserable. I remember set 8 had a pretty rough winter break because that was the Yumi patch where Yumi was dominating.
I think the worst winter break, it's actually summer break for us. It was when the legendary Kaisa with GA Morello.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, yes,
that was
yes,
the
that was a terrible winter break, right?
and it was so fun.
Yes.
I have to tell you, it was terrible balance, and I killed every time, and I loved the
Yep.
Russian roulette of I hit Kaisa, I win, I didn't hit Kaisa,
Yep.
I lost.
But like I said, I think Remix Rumble and Into the Arcane actually had pretty
Yeah,
solid things. Into the Arcane you can pick on if you like didn't like six costs, right? Like I'm sure six costs made it feel rough to you, but the actual like trait and champion balance wasn't that terrible. So that's why like I'm actually feeling pretty good about where we're going to land for the next set.
since we entered this topic, something that I have personally think, and I know a lot of people in the higher elos think the same, is that in the last couple of sets we've had one of the best first patches uh, of TFT. In the beginning of TFT, I know set 5, 6, 7, it was kind of rough the first patch every time,
Hmm.
and I think since Into the Arcane, it was really nice. And this patch as well, this set as well, I think the first patch was pretty good, and then there was this B patch, and it got not balanced. So
So I think part of that is that it's not necessarily that it's actually balanced, but everyone doesn't know what they're doing,
yeah,
right? And
it
the
could be.
game is very fun when everybody has no idea what they're doing. What happens though is very quickly the meta converges into like, okay, these are the three things we know works, right? A very common thing is literally what will happen is the set will go out, one day will pass, you'll look at the leaderboards worldwide, you'll look at like the top 5 people, you'll see if any of them are forcing a comp, and if somebody is, well, guess what everybody else is going to start doing,
Yeah.
right? Like that's just a common thing. Our next set, for example, has some pretty big tactics to try to avoid this. But even in our next set, I fully expect on day 2, someone's going to be like, this comp I know is one of the successful ones. Go force it. That's just how people want to climb, right? There's not really a lot we can do to stop that. All we can do is make sure that there are lots of alternatives, right? If somebody figures out that, and I'll use KO Coliseum terms here, but if somebody figures out that Battle Academia is strong, okay, cool. It probably should be. We just need to make sure there are other comps that you can play in addition to Battle Academia,
And do
you
you
know?
think that that is like a consequence of removing the stats for augments? Because back in the
No, no, I think this is just human nature, right? We see this with like every card game, every collectible card game, every game out there is like as soon as somebody has figured out one answer, it's not even the answer, it's they figured out one answer, everyone else wants to be a part of that answer because it's like, cool, I want to try that too. You're going to laugh, but I'm actually going to use a non PvP game as an example. Elden Ring is an example where it's like somebody figures out a cool Elden Ring build, they post it online, and everyone goes, I want to try that, right?
eights
Like,
also.
and that's all it is just people going, you figured out something great. I would like to try that. And that's why I said for us, it's important that there are a lot of different things to try and that they can all be successful. That's what good balance is.
So I was going to ask you, I know you've been personally very excited for this next set.
Yep.
I think I can say with some confidence that I've never seen you so excited for a set.
Yep.
And I was going to ask you about the future, but
Yep.
you already said a lot of things, and I'm pretty happy about that. That you said you actually said a lot of things that are not public
Yeah.
information, and I was
Yep.
not planning on posting this interview before PBE, but now I'm planning to do it because it
That's
would
fine.
be very nice. Um,
That's fine.
but I have two very important questions, I think, for
Hmm.
the pro players is are we getting the rundowns back? Are you planning to do the rundowns?
Yeah. So my plan is, I'm still. The honest answer is I'm still trying to figure it out and still working
Okay.
with Riot to figure it out exactly. But my initial plan is to bring back patch rundowns. I actually already recorded the PBE rundown, so that will come out.
Glad.
Um, yep, and we'll do patch rundowns. My plan is to actually work with some people on the live team to get them involved as well. After that, still figuring out everything else. But at the very least, we think rundowns are one of the things that having a direct way to talk about like what's working, what's not working, I think has been good, and I want to bring that back. So yes.
I think rundowns are something that is pretty unique about TFT. You will not
Hmm.
see another game that has something that from the dev team talking to the community every 2 weeks. So
Yep.
I think the rundowns was something that was really missed this set, and love to get that back. And
Yep.
the second question is something more personal now. Uh, the whole reason of this interview is because I'm a huge follower of your content. I watch a lot of streams. I watch your YouTube videos. I collect coins to. Mort must answer my question. Now Mort answered a lot of my questions,
Yep.
but I want to know how is your perception of our community, because I know Brazilian fans can be pretty passionate and we can be pretty overwhelming, I think, in some moments because our culture is so different from the NA culture because we play the same
Yep.
region now, but we're so different.
Yep.
And for the first time, we have a Brazilian winner in the
Yeah.
Golden Spatula, so that's a huge moment for us. We're so
Yep.
happy. How do you see the Brazilian community? How have you interacted to some of our players, and how is your experience with Brazil?
Yeah. Generally, like you said, I think every time when someone brings up Brazil, the immediate word I think is passion,
Yeah.
right? Like that's the number one thing that jumps up. And for me, that's a good thing, even if it comes across as negative, because I've always said that, like, imagine you ship a game and a bunch of people are passionate about it and sharing all the things that are wrong with it. That's better than no one cares, right? Like that's the worst outcome is you could ship something and everyone's like, it's fine. Who cares? Right? Like I want passionate players. I want to talk about that. And generally I would say I haven't had any like super bad reactions. If anything, some of them are self-inflicted, right? Like for example, I know when I was streaming, I can be pretty off the cuff and be a little loose and be a little silly sometimes. And I think someone in my position, a lot of people are looking to me to sort of be that like lead of the set, right? Like really just this like good representative of Riot and TFT in the game. And I think sometimes I did that a bit of a disservice. And if anything, I got some negatives there. So to me, I think stuff like the patch rundown or walk the dog or like the Paris Open coming up, I'm really looking forward to. Like I've never had a bad experience with any fan at like the Vegas Open or the Macau Open or any of the players. Like if I'm casting an event and I talk to them, it's always positive. And that's what I take away from like the Brazil community and the community in general is that it you almost have to separate the TFT community from the online community
Yeah.
because generally the TFT community is just like all positive, right? That's why I'm really looking forward to the Paris Open because there's like I think more players than ever this time. There's a bunch of people that are going to be there. It's going to be great. It's the online like the Reddit, the Twitter where there's just anger there, and I've learned you just kind of have to look past that. So um, but yeah, like I said, overall, when I look at the TFT community and the Brazil community, I think passion, and I'm happy for that passion because that passion is why we've been here 6 years and we're making 20 sets and we're going to keep making even better stuff. And you mentioned I'm excited about 16. Kind of put my heart into 16 for that very reason to make sure that this is like a set no one will ever forget.
I think that if you ask a Brazilian if they're happy that Brazil is associated with passion, they will always be happy. That's like
Yeah.
we are proud of that. And you mentioned Paris, and I know that you do not make the decisions of where the opens
Nope.
are,
Nope.
but I know that's someone else. But I really hope that one day we can get an open in Brazil. I don't know, São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, maybe in the future. I think something that it's pretty different about TFT. In I don't know how much you understand about that. TFT is so important for Brazilian players because TFT allows you to compete with the highest level players,
Yeah.
and you don't have to be limited by your conditions. Like
Yes.
I I am from the southest state of Brazil, so that's pretty far from the
Yep.
servers of NA. I play with like 250 ping,
Yep.
and I can compete in Tacticians Cup II against I don't know, Kyun. I won against
Yep.
Kyun hitting a 3-star forecast. So I was like pretty happy, and I was so lagged. And TFT creates opportunity in a country that it's important that we have opportunity. Conditions are different, so
Yeah, I want to call out that the thing you just described is like one of our key pillars of TFT as an esport is that anyone can enter, anyone can win, right? This isn't a game where you need a team and you need like now, granted it's going to take like you said between teams and recognition, like it's going to take practice,
yeah.
right? But at the end of the day, our first world champion, I think at the time double was like 17 and barely had a laptop. Like that's what we want. We want the people who are like it's their up and coming story. They can make, big things happen. So that is a pillar of TFT and will always be true.
And when Double won the first championship, Slooper was the second one, and we were
Yep.
all watching because Slooper traveled across the country to play here
Yep.
in São Paulo. So that was like such a big moment for the community, and we were
Yep.
asking him for to hold the Timos, and he didn't hold the Timos, but that's part of the game. So um, that was great. It was a great interview. I want to thank you again for
Yeah.
talking to me, talking to the Brazilian community,
Hmm.
just being transparent. I'm looking
Of
to
course.
uh, translate everything. I'm going
Hmm.
to make an article and I'm going to make a video with subtitles, but I think this conversation can be shown to everyone since it's in
Yep.
English. And I think it's great to have a set designer, dev, gameplay director that is so open to the community, and we all appreciate you a lot. I'm
No
going
worries.
to
No worries.
say thank you again to the Riot's PR team because they contacted me and they found me to
Nice.
make this work. So thank you
Cool.
to that, and looking forward to another conversation in the future.
Yeah, happy to. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Back to work.
Bye
Later.
bye.